This is a review of Gintama Chapter 574, Path. My name is Colton, and I got stuff to say about this chapter, I guess not unlike last week, but I definitely have a lot more to say about this, that's for sure. I've got a theory or two, anyway, like always, you are probably listening to this on the Life Lessons podcast feed first, maybe, or on YouTube, whichever you prefer. But if you're listening to this on the Life Lessons feed, I want to once again remind you that if you have not read past where we are on the Life Lessons podcast, or if you're just not caught up on the manga in general, please do not listen to this. There will be heavy spoilers. So please go away if you don't want to be spoiled. I don't want to be mean, but I mean, don't be like me and, spoil yourself, cause I guess unless you want to do that, but I'm not telling you what, I'm not telling you what to do with your life. I'm just saying, I'm just warning you if you don't want to be spoiled. So enough of my warnings. You've been warned. I'm going to go on and talk about this chapter. So chapter 574, Path. Which, by the way, Sorachi's chapter titles have been, increasingly less wordy, I guess, since the beginning of the manga. But that's neither here nor there. Where do I start with this chapter? I guess let's start with some small things first. The boys are back in town, as they say. All four of them are together. Gintoki, Katsura, Takasugi, and Sakamoto. Of course, Gintama has to, have that one really cool, really sentimental moment between characters, and then it has to get shit on because, that's the joke. As, Sakamoto is trying to bridge the gap between everybody, but is literally spit on because they can't all just be nice to each other. No, they have to be total assholes to each other, which, you know what? That's them. That's just how their relationship is. Before I started, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a point here of reference. I guess even, as far as, before the Shogun assassination arc, I don't know how I would have felt about Takasugi, I guess, participating in the antics, but, you know what, after getting more characterization for Takasugi and seeing a bit more of him than just, I wanna destroy the world, I fucking hate everything, I'm Takasugi, I'm emo. Before, we got any kind of characterization of him past that, I wouldn't have been, it would have felt weird to see him, interact with other characters as jokingly as he is a little bit in this chapter, but, I think I'm okay with him being a part of the joke now. I think it works. I think he's come to the point where it's okay to see him interact with the other three and, just be one of the somewhat, not really goofy character, but, he takes part in the antics, I guess. And I think that's a nice little thing that I enjoy seeing from him. I guess if you want to argue, you can even say that he was kind of sort of becoming part of the antics as far back as the little reunion party where we had all the Yakult jokes, but then again those were fake letters from his Kyotai people anyway. But you know what? That's neither here nor there. Again, just seeing Takasugi being a part of the antics, I thought was just kind of nice. Boy, so what else? Where else do I want to go from here? The little monologue that took up, I think, about half of this chapter from Katsura, I thought was really nice. I don't there's not really a lot to discuss in there other than it was just a nice monologue from him, basically kind of summarizing all of what the three of them had been through ever since that fateful day where Gintoki executed Shoyo, and kind of basically how when Shoyo died, in a way, their friendship kind of died that day too, because obviously, not only did Gin have to, execute, his only father figure, but, his friends had to watch him. And, obviously Takasugi held that against him for a long time. And while I think Katsura was a little more understanding comparatively, I'm sure that, he still kind of held that over Gintoki for the longest time too, until, they met again and he kind of started going through his metamorphosis into the character he is now. But still, that really put this is an understatement, but I think that really put a strain on their friendship, obviously. Like, that was an extremely tough situation. Like, I don't know how anybody can go through that. I don't know how, I better stop there before I start rambling, because holy shit, episode 305 of the anime, those chapters of the of the manga were animated still pretty recently, and honestly, it still kind of fucks me up a bit. Still makes me cry. It's still hard, even with all this Utsuro stuff. It's still hard to watch that. But anyway, so that monologue was nice. It was nice to see them, fight together and all that. So yeah, I think that's really all about it for that. Let's get to some of the bigger stuff I want to talk about, because this chapter, we sort of find out that Takasugi kind of sort of knew about Utsuro all along. Kind of. I didn't really know how to take that at first, because basically Takasugi, through his I guess his talent of observation, I'm not even sure if that's a phrase, through some educated guesses, I guess Takasugi was kind of able to figure out, something's up with Shoyo. And I'm going to do my best to kind of go through my process with my thought process with this. So I wasn't really sure how I felt about Takasugi being all like, oh, well, I kind of saw this coming. Except his thought process about all this isn't exactly wrong, because Takasugi refers back to the moment that we saw in Courtesy of Divination, where Shoyo was taken away by the Naraku in front of Gintoki that fateful night, and he explains that the only person who could have apprehended someone like Shoyo would basically be Shoyo himself, because, as we saw back in the Shogun assassination arc, we caught a glimpse of how skilled and strong Shoyo is. Like, he can handle himself. He's got some reflexes on him. He can use a sword, so we know how potentially strong he really is. So it makes sense why Takasugi would come to that conclusion, I think, now that I think about it. And, we also get that kind of small flashback in the same arc where, he's when he was a child, and he and Shoyo had that discussion about how basically him and Shoyo are similar in the sense that they're both figuratively, lost in life, and they're still kind of trying to find themselves and figure out what being a samurai means to them. So basically, I don't think this is necessarily like a cop-out or anything, because, while, again, I am still like, okay, so I guess he knew, sure, whatever, but again, I think Takasugi just was able to use some kind of, like, reasoning in order to figure out that, oh yeah, something's up. But I think this kind of leads into my predictions, and not just my predictions for the next chapter or anything, because I don't really have any particular predictions for like next chapter, but I think I have a few predictions as to what's probably going to happen in the story, considering Utsuro and Shoyo. So, again, going back to Takasugi's thoughts on how Shoyo was taken away, I think what we're going to find out, like Takasugi said, will be that again, Shoyo at some point was probably starting to lose himself to Utsuro and was slowly, I guess, losing control of himself. So he probably decided ahead of time that he would willingly give himself up to the Naraku, who, at that point, were working under the command of the Tendoshu to get rid of anybody who ran the risk of encouraging rebellion against the Yamato. Again, Shoyo knowing full well that he'd be executed, which basically I think was his, his end goal. Basically meaning he probably wanted to get himself killed in an attempt to stop Utsuro from coming out. I feel like that's probably how things went down, as opposed to when we were first experiencing Courtesan of a Nation and when we were first finding out about Shoyo being taken away by the Naraku, that he was probably going with the Naraku because, I forget if I came up with this or if I heard somebody else talk about this, but I do remember people theorizing that Shoyo had possibly made a deal with the Naraku to take him in exchange for the lives of his students, because it is kind of confusing as to why the Naraku didn't apprehend his students in the first place. I mean, yeah, they were kids and they can't really do anything, but you'd figure, with people as ruthless as the Tendoshu and the Naraku, they could have killed those kids at any point. That they could have been seen as potential threats. I mean, Gintoki, Takasugi, and Katsura all essentially grew up to be humongous threats and humongous powerhouses during the Amanto War, in trying to get Shoyo back. But I think where the story is going, Shoyo probably, gave himself up to the Naraku in order to basically kill himself and Utsuro. I think that considering, where the story is heading and the more we find out about Utsuro, I feel like that would make the most sense, but you never know. I'm just kind of making some educated guesses here. Also, whether Shoyo, I guess, staged everything to the extent of, say, having Gin be the one to execute him. That possibility, I think, is up in the air. Who knows how much of this was actually, I guess, predicted or staged by Shoyo. But I think that part of his capture and execution were staged by Shoyo. I just feel like I don't know, some of this is a little roundabout in a way. I don't know, I just feel like Sorachi is gonna turn us all on our heads and be like, oh yeah, this was all planned by Utsuro all along to some extent. I feel like that's where the story is going. I kind of don't want to be right, because, Sorachi most of the time can be very unpredictable. Most of the time, not all the time, but, I like not being able to guess where Sorachi is going with the story, which isn't something that I've ever been able to do, honestly, because, he's unpredictable enough of a writer to the point where his story is still interesting to read week to week, and you don't really know where he's going. Oh, something else, we also don't know whether or not if he was still affiliated with the Tendoshu during his time as Shoyo or not. That's kind of up in the air as well, because I think, if I remember correctly, the whole thing about Utsuro was that, obviously Utsuro has lived for a long time. And so at some point he thought, hey, I'm going to be a good guy and, do some good in the world or some stupid thing like that. I feel like we need to have some kind of little mini flashback arc for Utsuro and see how certain highlights of his life transpired. I think we're due for some more specific storytelling when it comes to that, because I feel like some of his past is still a little vague. Why did he suddenly decide I'm gonna be a good guy? why is he back now? Like, I think we really need to find out why with Utsuro. And I really hope we get that before the end of this arc. Otherwise, I think at this point, this whole thing with Utsuro still has the potential to end up being kind of sloppy. But, you know, I still trust Sorachi enough. You know, he's written the series pretty well, at least for, I'm going to say, 95% of the entire run. So, you know, his good writing really outweighs his bad writing, I feel like. So I still trust him in order to make this work, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't afraid that this could end up being kind of being not very, I guess not being very good, I guess. I still have my worries, but I'm still going to trust him. Again, these are all educated guesses. I have no idea what's going to really happen, obviously. We still have a lot that we need to figure out with Utsuro, so I'm still waiting to judge this part of the story until we know everything. So I think that's it. I hope everybody enjoyed my review. Hopefully I got my thoughts across pretty well. Probably gonna have to edit some of that, actually. But you won't know because it'll just sound so perfect when you listen to this. But anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed this review, and I hope you guys have a good week, and I will see you next week for chapter 575.